Hello, race fans, and welcome back to the Ohio Dirt Track Podcast. Thank you for coming back for another episode. We're very excited to get on the phone this week with this week's interview. We have a driver all the way from Knoxville, Iowa. Jacob, it's been Knoxville a couple of weeks here.
Yeah, we're kind of on some themes right now, but this was definitely a good interview, and I learned a lot, actually.
Yeah, I say Knoxville. The driver is actually from Des Moines, but most frequently is on the track at Knoxville Raceway. And we're going to get right to it here, and we're excited to share our interview with you this week with McKenna Hasse. Okay, we're on the phone here on the Ohio Dirt Track Podcast today with McKenna Hasse from Des Moines, Iowa. How are you doing today, McKenna?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm going to name just a couple of things here that you're involved in, and then we're just going to dive right into talking about your season and how things are going. But if you're not familiar with McKenna, she's a sprint car driver out of Iowa, and she's involved in quite a few things. She has her own race team as well as the Compass Driver Development Company that she owns. She's a 22-year-old sprint car driver who is a finance major, interested in investing, featured on the Fox Sports This Racing Life earlier this year, 2019. And on top of all of that, I'm sure there's many other things, but on top of all that, she's a participant in the American Ninja Warrior TV show this year. McKenna, do you sleep at all?
I do a lot more than now that I'm not in college, but back then I didn't get to sleep a whole lot.
Right. So how was the season in Knoxville this year?
Oh, it was so-so. I mean, I felt like we just never really got up to speed, obviously with all the rain. That didn't help much, but I felt like we capped out the season okay on the championship. We should have won that, and we didn't, but I felt like it was the first time all year that we finally put ourselves in position. I just felt like the rest of the year we had really fast cars. We just didn't put ourselves in those first three rows. But other than that, it was kind of a quick season, kind of a transition year, I think, really trying to prep for next year and make next year really strong.
So you're making changes going into 2020, or are you going to be back in the 360?
So we hope to travel more, definitely, which I know I've said that for like 3 years. But this year I mean it. And so I hope to do a combination of 360 and 410 and a combination of states between like Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, etc.
Awesome. That's what we like to hear. We definitely want you to make it out to Ohio.
McKenna, we saw that you got rained out a little bit this weekend, and you actually made your way to Eldora Speedway for the 4-pound weekend, and it looks like you tried to make it out to Kokomo on yesterday, actually. So are there plans you mentioned racing in Ohio and Indiana, but are those some of the tracks you want to get to?
Yeah, I think, first off, obviously there's more 410 stuff out this direction, and so I think I need to get more or any experience, obviously, in a 410. So I kind of want to start out easing into the 410, but once I get good enough and comfortable enough, I would definitely like to try some of the bigger shows or some all-star events or whatever.
How much have you gotten out of Iowa? Are there the tracks that you have hit in your surrounding states that, or have you pretty much stayed in Iowa the entire time?
We've ran with that Invader series, the Sprint Invader series that travels around Iowa quite a bit, and then we tried to go to I-80 in Nebraska, and we rained out this year. We went to Tennessee earlier this year. We rained out in Arkansas. We rained out in Indiana. We rained out in Missouri. So we did try this year, but we've been rained out a lot. So we're planning on going back to Plymouth, Indiana this weekend, and then hopefully run some ASCS stuff down south here in October. So that's kind of the game plan. But the biggest thing has just always been our budget, and that's part of the reason why I'm trying to make a big point to expand next year, just because it's not that we've just ran Knoxville because that's all we've ever wanted to do. It's just been the finances have only allowed for just that, which we're super grateful for that opportunity alone. Not to sound greedy or anything, but this is what I want to do for a living, and so I want to get more experience and more laps. And I think, fingers crossed, we will have the budget to do that next year.
Yeah, I mean, racing a sprint car is not like playing golf. I mean, it is a very costly thing. So I think, all the listeners understand that and understand that, the need for sponsors and to create that budget so that you can stretch it out a little bit. We definitely felt the pain of the rain here in Ohio this year, just like everybody else across the country. So you made the trips out and didn't get to race. And does that start and stop, that traveling and then not getting those laps in? You feel like that bogs you down during the year?
I don't know. I think so. I think either way, it's frustrating. I mean, we've done a lot of those where we get there and then just get the car fired off and then it rains out. And so I think, in general, I don't know. Obviously, it's a lot of wear and tear whether you're racing or not racing, but I think in some ways financially it helped us a little bit this year, just saving equipment, but also like getting exposure and getting the winnings. We lost a lot of that, so I don't know. It's kind of a 50-50, I guess.
So with racing in Knoxville basically on a weekly basis, do you think the competition over there has helped you out?
In terms of like making me a better driver or like?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can take whatever you learn at Knoxville and take that anywhere, and I don't think you can do that vice versa necessarily. But I also think just because you're on at Knoxville doesn't mean you're going to go anywhere and dominate. And so I'm very grateful that I got the Knoxville experience first before going to smaller tracks rather than doing the opposite myself. But yeah, I mean, I think the Knoxville competition is absolutely phenomenal, and the track surface and everything. I mean, it's hard to beat it, and so I think I can use that and apply it anywhere that I go. But it's definitely not, like I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity to race there, but it's not something that I'm not complacent just running the same track every week and running points or anything like that. Like, I want to travel and win at other tracks and other types of cars with other series.
So I want to ask about your driver development program that you're doing. I know that started off probably 4 or 5 years into that now?
Gosh, we are 2015 was our first year. So
okay, it's about 4 years, and it's called Compass.
Crazy. It is called Compass. Yep.
And you started with one, and how many young drivers are you up to at this point?
So we have around 6 core drivers, which kind of means like kids that we are heavily invested in, either with full carts or just really invested in their programs. We also have, we've probably helped 15 to 20 plus kids on top of that with safety gear or marketing or guidance of some sort, or just helping them get started in the sport, different things like that. So yeah, it's crazy just how much it's grown since we started.
How do you typically identify those young drivers to be a part of the program? Is it people that you hear about in the area, or do they come to you? How does that happen?
Honestly, especially with our core drivers, they were kind of just like God sent, honestly. It was just, especially like Gage, my first kid, he was in my classroom, and I don't know, I just like literally showed up on his doorstep and talked to his mom about it. And they weren't really into racing at all, but he ended up being a phenomenal race car driver. And Lucas, my house car driver this year, his mom passed away this year from cancer, and so we gave him an opportunity. He's 8 years old, and he was part of our application process. This was the first year we actually did applications because we had a donation of safety gear, so we were able to help more kids. And so that was the first time we did that. A couple of our other families honestly just reached out over Facebook, and we were able to get them involved. We do have a capacity, unfortunately, so we can't help everybody that reaches out. But, it varies, but it seems like everybody has ended up being a good fit for the program regardless, and I'm always happy to help anybody if I can.
That, what I've read about it, and what we saw on This Racing Life, this Fox Sports feature, it's incredible. So I commend you.
Thank you.
And what you're doing for the sport, the future of the sport is an awesome thing. I've got 4 kids, and when I was watching that, I was thinking, I want to pick up my kids and move to Iowa so I can get my 7 and 8 year old in this and get them in a car. So
there you go.
Good work with that, and keep on with what you're doing with that. So.
Thank you.
McKenna, you are also just featured on American Ninja Warrior. So can you maybe talk about that a little bit, like how all that went, and then if you even think that helped you out as a driver as well?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of weird because before I was on the show, like, I thought the show was, the coolest thing in the world. And then when I got to the show, I'm like, man, this is the coolest thing in the world. And now it's just kind of become such a big part of my life, that it's more of like a family and a lifestyle, I guess. And so that's kind of cool. It just started out, I was doing it to get stronger for racing. And it definitely, I thought I was in shape, but it really, really got me in shape. And I honestly think, that was a huge game changer for me last season in the 360. And just with those wins we got, I just felt like behind the wheel, I could like physically just really manhandle the car and not get tired, or like if I, especially like on a rough track, it didn't touch me. This year, I actually, after the show was in May, and then I kind of cut back on training a bunch. I hardly trained at all this summer. I was traveling a lot, and I could tell a big difference behind the wheel. But now I'm back to training 10 times harder than I ever trained before. And so I train 3 days a week at least, and I'm typically racing if I'm not training. And so it's been an absolutely insane training schedule. So I'm definitely going to be a lot stronger than I was even then, and training for next year's show. And so, yeah, that's exciting. But I think the training that I'm doing right now is going to help me next year for racing mentally more than anything, just because the training program that I'm on is a big mental. It's kind of like Navy SEAL training, honestly, and it's just pushing you beyond what you even think you're capable of. And I think that that'll help me a ton behind the wheel, just helping me with being like all out all the time and not backing down and stuff like that.
So you mentioned something, basically you mentioned the physicality of driving a sprint car. And I think a lot of people sitting in the bleachers or watching online or on TV, whatever it is, it looks way smoother than it is on that, on the track. And how physical is it? Not just, like you said, the manhandling of the car, but like just a normal race. If you don't get upside down, how beat up are you when you get done with a heat race or a feature race?
I personally think it's super physical. Obviously, like, the more you race, the more in race shape you get. And I don't race as much as a lot of guys do a year. We run like 10 to 20 shows a year. So I think I tend to be a bit more sore and stuff like that sometimes when I don't race as much. But yeah, regardless, it's like unbelievable. I wish there was some kind of machine that people could just like sit in, and it could they could somehow, like a physical simulator that would simulate, just so people could feel what that's like. Because yeah, to your point, it's nothing what it looks like at all. You'll be like banging on the cushion, hanging on for dear life, and feeling like you're about ready to let go of the wheel. And then you watch the video, and it looks like a nice, smooth little, swan or something going around, like turn 4. It's like, no, that's not what it feels like at all. And so, yeah, it's incredibly physical. And then you get sometimes people are like, well, I know so-and-so, and they're super, big, and they drive a sprint car. And it's like, well, I don't know if I have an answer for that, but I know for me that, plus I'm kind of tinier too. Like when I first got started, I was just, still probably am a bit, skinny for driving a sprint car. So I've had to I'm trying to gain 10 pounds of muscle weight before next season, which is a lot. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is when I went from when I was a kid growing up racing the boys, we were kind of the same, but then after puberty, it was like, man, they all got this natural muscle, and I felt like I had to catch up. So yeah, it's a lot of work and dedication, but it's worth it.
Are there any of those kids that you grew up racing out there that you're still out there on the track with now?
Yeah. There's a few that I race outlaw karts with, definitely at Knoxville now. And, it's always interesting to see who quits and who doesn't, or who makes it to Knoxville and who doesn't. It's scary to think that some of my kids are going to be there here in a couple of years. Some of them started with me when they were 5 or 6 years old, and I'm like, geez, they're going to be in sprint cars soon. So,
what would your favorite racing memory be?
I guess, my second win at Knoxville last year was pretty special. That was one of my favorites. For sure, that was really exciting. I think, off the track, this racing life this year with Fox, that was honestly